I'm here today with Andrew Garnett from Cypress. Andrew, you want to introduce yourself briefly?
Thank you so much, Derek. Happy to be here. Andrew Garnett, Chief Marketing Officer for Cypress Dental, and I'm excited to spend a little time with you.
What does Chief Marketing Officer do?
Essentially, I run the sales team. At the end of the day, I need to make sure that the sales are coming in the door. We're a small niche company, and we're headquartered in Stockton, California. So we've been around for over 50 years. We're kind of a company that does things the old school way. We like to take care of our customers. We want to make sure they get good value from their dental plan. And that's what I'm here to talk about.
Awesome. So how long have you been in business for as a carrier?
Since the 70s, really for over 50 years, Cypress Dental has been around. Used to go by name of Dutcher Insurance, and about the mid 80s, we made the change over to Cypress Dental.
Yeah.
So
How did it, Dutcher Insurance?
Yeah,
How did it come from? Was it an insurance agency?
Yeah, so it was an association type plan. There was a gentleman by the name of Bob Dutcher who had the company at the time.
Okay.
And he started with it, and he was renting out a portion of a building, and up on the top was today's owner of Cypress, Chuck Richardson.
Oh.
And so he went ahead, and they got to know one another. He rented out the bottom, and they became really good friends. Yeah.
So how long have you been in the dental industry?
Probably for about 20 years now, going over a couple of different places I've been at. Been with Cypress Dental since 2016.
Okay.
We've had a lot of growth in those years. The trajectory has been pretty off the charts. A lot of times people come up to us and ask if we are some sort of a startup company, but we've made some changes to our plan designs that really kind of catapulted us in front of a lot of other carriers. Things like no waiting periods whatsoever. So literally, it doesn't matter if you're a 3-life group, you come on with Cypress Dental, you can get a crown day one. No missing tooth exclusions. So if you've had that gap in your tooth maybe 10 years ago, now you need to take care of it. You come on board with a plan that's got Cypress Dental, you can go ahead and get that done. So we tried to make the contract as user-friendly as possible, and that's really allowed us to attract a lot of customers that want to stay with us and are loyal.
Yeah, I remember for a long time, almost all of the dental carriers we worked with had waiting periods.
Sure.
And I think that Cypress was one of the first, if not the first, to pretty much completely get away from waiting periods. And, it doesn't seem like it really did affect the rates that much.
Yeah, for most part, people are taking care of their teeth by and large, whether or not they had a job that supplied dental insurance or they just had good dental hygiene. So really that was the whole idea, is that, there's going to be this pent up demand and we're not going to have enough premium to offset that claim. But at the end of the day, people need to take care of their teeth, whether or not it's something that's today, tomorrow, or in the future. And so when you have a dental plan that allows them to go ahead and do that right away, that's just more value for the customer, and it's more value for the employer. So we believe in making sure it's as easy as possible for people to access the benefits.
As a dental carrier, what would you say is the most important thing on your plate in the last couple of years? I mean, where is your biggest challenge?
Biggest challenge, I would say, making sure that the value is there. So what you're charging for the dental plan, people are being able to access those benefits and make the most of it. There's a lot of different parts to it. You have the provider who's going to see the member. Well, that provider needs to be paid efficiently. That's their number one complaint, is that they're not getting paid fast enough by the dental carrier. We pay in 3.5 business days. So the claims are coming in, they're auto-adjudicated, unless it's a major services and we need to make sure that it's medically necessary. The claim comes in, we go ahead and remit the premium as fast as possible to make sure they're happy. Happy providers, they say good things to the members. So once you're taking care of that piece, the rest of it really just comes down to having a good plan that's affordable, doesn't have too much cost to it, but at the same time is going to have enough to keep the plan afloat.
Yeah, we in the last couple of years, we know that we've experienced one of the largest dental carriers, we'll just put it that way, have some really hard times with keeping providers. I mean, and it would be someone that you wouldn't expect.
Right.
And what we've heard is that they've made it so difficult for the providers to get paid, and they've requested so much more paperwork that the providers have to submit to the carrier to actually get a check in the mail, that the providers are just getting tired of it. They're getting tired of dealing with it. It is a cost of business.
Right.
You know, when you have to have someone full time just to process billing for insurance, and you work with how many different carriers? What would you say is common? Maybe six,
7 for sure.
6 or 7 dental carriers. Dentists are usually contracted with 6 or 7 different dental carriers. They're getting stretched pretty thin.
Right.
At least that's what I'm seeing.
It's true, and you know, as a provider, they need to have an ability to contract with a carrier. So that means they're going to say, all right, I'll accept the cost for this service, whether it's a cleaning. I normally charge $100. I'm going to go ahead and take $80 as an example. Well, as a carrier like us, we're trying to attract as many providers as possible. So we're asking them to cut the cost of their service, and we're going to bring them patients to do so. Well, if I want a really, really large network, well, then I'm going to have to increase the cost of that contract, meaning I'm going to pay them more. Well, then I'm just going to charge the group more because I have to ask for more in premium. So that's the fine line of being able to pay enough to get a good quality network, yet also staying competitively priced and keeping the providers happy. The key to that really is making sure there's value all the way around for everyone involved.
Yeah. And the value, working with Cypress or any other dental carrier that is lean and efficient, is that they get paid quickly. They're easy to work with. There are a clear line to escalate problems. Right. Versus going up the chain of management through a company with 2,000 employees, which we work with all the time.
Sure.
Andrew, if you were an employer and you were faced with your renewal options, your dental options for your employees, I mean, walk us through how you would make decisions on which dental carrier to work with from an employer standpoint.
Sure. Well, it's easy to start with price. You need to know what you're paying for. So let's take a look at, I've got 10, 20, 100 different employees and their dependents that they're going to cover. Well, how much is the cost of the plan? And I've got maybe a $1,000 calendar year max, a $1,500, $2,000 unlimited, whatever the case may be. Well, how much are they going to actually use of that calendar year max? So how much is each member going to actually go to the dentist and go ahead and get the services? And then I'm going to take a look at what the cost is. And so once I have those two components, how much does it cost and what's the benefit? The only other third thing is where do I get to go ahead and utilize it? Is it a network focused plan, what we also call a MAC plan, where you need to really stay in the network or you're going to really get balanced billed? Or is it what we call a UCR or Freedom Network, where you can go anywhere, whether there's a network or not? Those are really the biggest components. What does it cost? How do I use it? And what's my benefit? After that, it really just comes down to working with a carrier that you trust and you know they're going to be able to get done what they say they're going to do.
Yeah, you said two things that I wanted you to elaborate on a little bit. One is the MAC plan versus a usual and customary or UCR plan.
Right.
And then the second thing was the annual maximum benefit. So I'll start with the annual maximum benefit first. Statistically, what do you think would be a rich annual maximum benefit to have on a dental plan?
Well, the key word is rich. Well, Rich would say as much as you would like, so an unlimited plan. So something where it doesn't matter how often I go, there's going to be a really high calendar year max. The truth of the matter is how much am I going to use? It comes down to, do you want to overpay for something you're not going to utilize? You know, we talk about that all the time. How many times do you go on vacation and you go ahead and you get a rental car, and while you're there they say, would you like to have the extra, protection plan? And you say, no, I'm not interested in it. I'm using my American Express card anyways. Well, the same kind of thing comes down to dental plans. Sometimes it's worth it. You want to have something that has a really high calendar year max. At the end of the day, people use about $1,000 statistically each calendar year. That's really what they're looking at.
So on average, about $1,000 a year is what most people use.
Yeah, when you take a look at statistically and imagine a bell curve, you have the highest users and you've got the lowest users. It's going to be right around 1,000. But we sell these plans with all sorts of different maximums for different reasons. You might be talking to an owner, and the owner knows, hey, I've got 3 crowns coming up, and I'm going to need as high as much as possible. And he's funding the plan, so maybe they're going to go ahead and buy that plan no matter what my employees are necessarily going to need. But at the end of the day, you're trying to get something that provides enough value at the right price point. That's really what provides the most value. How much can I get for the cost? That's usually what the bottom line is.
So now talk to me a little bit about the difference between a MAC plan and a UCR plan. What is that? First of all, what does that stand for? What does MAC and UCR stand for?
Sure. MAC plan, MAC, Maximal Allowable Charge. This just means that if I stay in network, my benefits are going to be really, really rich. But if I go out of network, the plan is going to pay off of a fee schedule. And at the end of the day, the bottom line is you're going to get excessively balanced billed. So the key is MAC plan, stay in network. They've got great value though, because they're about half the price of a UCR plan.
Gotcha.
So don't just discount them. They do have a purpose. UCR plans, that just means I've got the same rich network, just as like a MAC plan, but if I go out of network, there's an opportunity for me to go see anybody else, and it's going to pay what 9 out of 10 dentists charge in that geographical area. Kind of depend on which value they use. Usually 90th percentile UCR is the most common one, but if I had to go see a specialist and they referred me into San Francisco, I'm traveling from Reading to San Francisco. Well, the cost might be higher in San Francisco. It's going to pay those San Francisco claim rates. If I go into Stockton, it's going to pay Stockton. If I'm in Florida, Georgia. So think of it as protection outside of the network on a UCR plan.
That's what I like to tell employees, that if they have, let's say they have a dependent that's in school, that's out of state or Southern California, and they go to the dentist down there, a usual and customary rate plan, 90 percentile, 85th percentile, 95th percentile, will pay based on the area that they live.
Exactly. Where's the claim being incurred? That's how it's going to be paid.
Yes.
Exactly. So it's a great plan for going outside of the network if you're ever going to fall into those types of claims.
So now let's say that you have an employer with multiple locations that is national, multiple states. What would be the important parts to buying an insurance plan from a carrier for an employer that has multi-state locations?
Well, you want to make sure that you have a national network. So you want to have providers that are going to be everywhere. Sometimes you're going to have people that maybe go outside of America. Maybe a lot of times you have contractors and people might go back to Mexico. So you want to they have a network of providers in the Mexico area. So those are some things to consider. But when we're talking about MAC plans and UCR plans, another thing I see is employers fund the MAC plan. So they'll pay 100% of the employee cost on the MAC plan, and then they'll allow employees to buy up to the UCR plan. So if I'm somebody that looks at my network and says, you know what? This is my provider right here. They're in network. I'm going to go ahead and have the employer pay for my cost. Then I'm okay. If I'm somebody who says, you know what, my dentist is not in network, then I'm going to go ahead and pay the difference. So I'm going to buy up to the high plan. So that's one more way to do it. But at the end of the day, as far as whether a plan is going to be good based on network, you want to make sure that you have a large national network of providers to go see.
Yeah, I would say that's something that we're seeing too, is that it's not common for employers to have multiple dental plans as options, like a low, medium, high. But we are seeing more interest in that, and it's giving employees choice.
Correct.
We always talk about employee perception of their benefits, and we want to make sure that their perception of their benefits plan is that it's rich and that it's good. It's a good benefit and not an employee irritation. I mean, some employers that we've worked with in the past, we get introduced into the conversation and they have 12 different medical plans.
Right.
And it's like all you're doing is confusing your employees.
Sure.
That's too many.
Yeah. If you're not in the business, how would you know which one to pick?
Exactly. And they go price.
Right.
and price isn't necessarily
Not
the best
always.
way to choose.
Yeah, especially if you don't know which provider to go to.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah, now I've got something that's being paid for by my employer, or I'm paying something and I can't even use it. So
Yeah.
that's not going to work.
So what are the other bells and whistles that you can add to a plan to really make them special?
There's a lot of different things that you can do, but probably orthodontia is one of the biggest things I see, you know,
Yeah.
when it comes to getting braces for kids. Sometimes even as adults, we want to go ahead and add that. It's not that expensive to add it to a plan, and it sure is a nice benefit. I know I've got 2 kids in braces right now, and it really does help kind of offset that cost if I do have braces covered by the plans. Implants are something that we often see covered by the plan. So if somebody needs a dental implant, and then of course the white teeth on the back, also called posterior composites.
Yeah.
Those are probably the most common procedure we see as well.
So most composites, so end to anterior composites, would that
And
be
the white fillings are always going to be covered in the front.
usually covered in the
Yeah,
front?
they're going to be covered.
Yes.
It's the ones in the back. A lot of times the silver and even the ADA will say that the mercury end there is not going to hurt you and it's still okay.
Yeah.
Many dentists, they only are going to do the white fillings
So
now.
a lot of dental plans out there
Yeah.
don't include posterior composites,
Right,
which are the
right.
white feelings in the back teeth.
The white fillings in the back. Whether or not you have a choice in the matter, or if the plan is covering them, the dentist is just going to do them. So if your plan covers them, you're not going to incur that extra cost. If it doesn't, you're going to pay the difference between the old mercury ones and the white fillings.
Gotcha. So that was my next question. If a plan doesn't cover something like implants, would an implant normally be covered at all?
Well, you'll have the pre-work done, so everything that's going to get it ready, but in terms of the implant itself, it's not going to be covered, so you're going to incur that cost.
Gotcha.
Some plans will say that we won't pay any of the procedures in conjunction with an implant if the implant's not covered, meaning if the implant's not covered, any of the prep work is not going to be covered as well.
Yes.
Our plan doesn't do that. If it didn't have it covered under it, we would still do the pre-work. But
Yeah.
every plan's a little bit different. It's getting a little bit into the weeds on how the claims are paid.
Yeah, I mean, just to kind of summarize what you're getting into without getting too detailed, that's probably been one of the areas that's a growing frustration, in the benefits, market as a consultant, is that the carriers have learned that price number one, benefits number two, and 180/50, so preventative usually 100%, basics usually 80%, majors 50%. And so if you can't compete on 180/50, maybe a $2,000 annual max or $1,500 annual max, how else can you reduce your rates? And you start looking at how do we change our contract on the back end to make it not as rich and to save money on premium. Now for the consumer, how do we figure that out? Like, how do we understand that the contract with Cypress is worse or better than the contract on how the dentist is actually paid with another carrier? I mean, do you have any suggestions on?
Well, that's where you come in, Derek. A good broker is going to go ahead and help that employer kind of figure out those differences. Yet, by and large, you're going to end up, as a broker and employer, you're going to work with a carrier that you get to know and you trust, and you know that they're not trying to move a procedure from being covered to not covered, so they don't have to go ahead and pay a claim and maybe keep their premiums more competitive. It really comes down to getting to know those people that you're working with on a daily basis, and what their word stands for. You can always take a look at the contract and get into the certificate of insurance and see exactly how things are paid. But as you're doing this all the time, you're going to find that you're going to have a sales executive, a representative, somebody from the company that you trust that is giving you exactly what you think you're buying. And many times it comes down to somebody like yourself getting into the weeds to make sure that things are covered the same as they were previously or better.
So, Andrew, what in your eyes, what do you see coming down the pipeline in the next maybe 2 to 3 years in your marketplace with dental insurance?
I believe that dental estimators of cost is going to be something that is going to really kind of come out in the forefront. People like to see exactly how much something is going to cost before they even get into the dental chair. We always like to take the mortgage calculators to see how much we
Yeah.
can afford when we're looking for a new house. It's the same thing when we want to get a crown, or if maybe we need to go ahead and get a root canal.
And
we want to
where-
know how much is that going to cost before.
Where would they access something like that? Would it be at the provider side,
More-
or would it be
more
on
and
the
more
carrier side?
More and more companies are starting to do that on the carrier side. So
Oh,
when they
really?
go in there and log as a member, they're going to be able to figure out exactly how much that should cost, or get a good idea of what that's going to cost me out of my pocket. How much is the insurance going to pick up, and how much as a member is it going to cost me?
Really?
And then even past that, the next thing I see is people starting to bid on work. There's no reason as a consumer, you can't say, put it out there, I need to go ahead and get a crown, and have providers bid on your work. So now we have an
Yeah.
opportunity for people that pull you in based on the procedures they're going to cover and at what the price point is. So as we go through this and we get more and more transparent with the cost, it's going to be able to have providers bidding on our work as a member, instead of us just going to see them and doing what they think is the right.
Gotcha. I mean, do you think that the shortage of dental providers is going to affect requesting more work of them, to provide estimates or bids on dental?
It's a good question. Coming out of COVID, we saw a lot of dental providers, especially the mom and pop type shops, go ahead and leave the market, and more
Yeah.
of what we call the DSOs, so the large kind of clinical settings kind of came in and they took over some of those markets. I believe there'll be a return. You'll have more traditional providers come back to the market. I also think that a lot of times we as consumers, it really depends on what we get comfortable with. If people find themselves going more and more to those clinical DSO type places, those types of providers are the types that, the more and more members, if they flock to those places and get services from them, well, they're not going to go anywhere. If people say, I'm not interested in going, and they have a shortage, you're going to have more and more of the traditional, smaller mom and pop type dentists return back to the market, I believe.
Well, hey, thanks for joining us today. I appreciate your time.
Happy to do so.
Yeah, it's just always great to learn a little bit more
Yep.
about your industry, and how we can do a better job as consumers. When we're actually going in to purchase something like dental insurance, and there's a lot behind the scenes that I think that there's a lot of employers that just don't understand.
Yeah,
They
that's
don't
true.
understand that price, the low price isn't necessarily the best option.
That's true. It's a factor, but it's not number one. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well,
Well,
hey, thank you. I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much, Derek.
Welcome.
Take care.